Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have Alpha Tau Medical Inc., trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol DRTS, and is an Israeli medical device company that focuses on research, development, and potential commercialization of the Alpha DART for the treatment of solid tumors. Please welcome its CFO, Raphi Levy. Nice to see you, Raphi.
Nice to see you as well, Anna. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Good. The floor is yours. Call me back when you're ready for questions.
Sounds good. Thank you. So great to be here again, and thanks everybody for your time. I want to give an introduction to Alpha Tau. Got some new data as well since we were here a couple of weeks ago, but we'll go through the story as well for those who are new to it. I think it's a fantastic story. So why don't we just get right into it. So we are the only ones who have figured out how to do a local alpha particle-based radiotherapy for solid tumors. This is a treatment that's injected directly into a tumor. It competes with the traditional surgery and radiation, where a clinician will say, I want to treat that tumor over there that I see in the image. They can do that using our therapy by injecting it into the tumor, using this incredibly powerful form of radiation. This alpha radiation, which has been known for many years to be incredibly more potent, others have been unable to utilize it. We have found a way to do so, and we've developed this platform, which we believe is incredibly broadly applicable. We've tried it now preclinically in animals in around 20 different tumor types. We have yet to see a tumor type which doesn't respond. Every tumor type we've tried this on responds. What we do is we customize the treatment for a particular area where the tumor is, for a particular size of the tumor, and the treatment plan the clinician wants to do, and give the clinician a personalized kit for that treatment of that particular tumor or set of tumors. So we've been doing this now for a couple of years with some fantastic data, which we'll touch on as well. We've got important data coming out this year and next year, as well as our first potential FDA approval looking for in 2025, and we'll talk about that as well. Because we have a product which we believe can be relevant to any solid tumor, as I've mentioned, so we need to figure out where we want to focus our time. And so we've come up with 3 core focus areas. The first one we call the localized and unresectable. These are tumors that may have other available options, like skin, squamous cell carcinoma tumors, like prostate cancer. But those patients who run out of local therapies, they run out of surgery or radiation as a relevant therapy, they quickly find out that they've run out of options. And we have found in some of those earlier trials that we can be a very new important source of hope for these patients. The second pillar of our strategy is what we call the high unmet need. These are tumors that don't have good available options. Ones that come to mind include glioblastoma of the brain or pancreatic cancer. Again, both cancers with a very devastating outlook. And because we believe that our therapy is indifferent to the type of the tumor, we would want to use it for tumors like this, those ones that have few available options, and see if we can increase the options available to these patients. Finally, the last pillar is one that we'll talk about a few times. It's the idea of treating metastatic patients. While we are focused on being a local therapy where the clinician uses our treatment to treat a particular tumor or set of tumors like they're doing today with other forms of radiation, we've seen an incredibly interesting effect coming out of this therapy where treating one tumor is catalyzing a systemic immune response. It's actually awakening the body's immune system to find those tumors elsewhere in the body. And so what that can potentially do is allow us to treat one tumor locally, but make it part of a systemic solution. So we would treat one tumor potentially while the patient is receiving other systemic therapies like immunotherapies, and see if we can help the body find those tumors elsewhere in the body as well. We're led by a fantastic team, split between the US and Israel. Our CEO and chairman, Uzi Sofer, who's a driving force behind the company, was previously co-founder and CEO of another Israeli medical device company called Brainsway, traded on the NASDAQ. He brings tremendous experience, having taken that business from an idea at the NIH through product development, R&D, clinical trials, approval, reimbursement, and sales. Myself, I joined just over 4.5 years ago from Goldman Sachs, where I was in investment banking in New York and in Tel Aviv. My last few years there, I led the healthcare banking efforts in Tel Aviv, which is how I got to meet this company and decided to move over. We're also joined by 2 professors at Tel Aviv University who invented this technology and continue to give us tremendous focus as we develop this product going forward. Peter Melnick, our Chief Commercial Officer, joined us a little under a year ago. He was the Chief Commercial Officer at Novocure, which is another medical device company focused on cancer therapeutics for difficult-to-treat cancers. And so he joined us from Novocure and brings tremendous experience in commercializing these products. Dr. Robert Den, our Chief Medical Officer, who joined us from Thomas Jefferson University, where he's a professor of radiation oncology. He had originally is Yale and Harvard Med School educated and focuses on running high-quality radiation oncology trials. Joined as well by Amnon Gat, our COO, and Ronen Segal, our CTO, both who joined with Uzi from Brainsway, bringing tremendous medical device experience on the operational, marketing, and technology sides. Our board of directors also brings a wealth of experience here, both from the medical device space as well as from the biotech and oncology therapeutic space. Whether it's Maury Blumenfeld, who was quite senior at GE Healthcare, on the board of Mako, which got sold to Stryker, whether it's Alan Adler, who built a medical device business which got sold to Covidien, which is now Medtronic. Mayor Jacobson, who is the owner of a business which represents many of the large biotech companies, Moderna, Amgen, Biogen, on a lot of their commercial activities outside of their core markets. So he's an oncology therapeutics commercialization expert by trade, and others as well, bringing a good mix of skills here to be able to give us guidance as we take this business forward. Financially, I'll say very quickly before we go into the business, we've been public for about a year and a half. At our last quarterly earnings, we had about $94.5 million of cash and deposits on the balance sheet. We're currently burning around $5 million a quarter, which means we have quite a bit of runway ahead of us, even as we continue to scale up our operations. We are thankfully well capitalized to continue to execute on our plans. So maybe I'll talk just for a few minutes about our technology and how it works, what we do with it. And just to start with 2 minutes of high school physics, so we are active in the space of alpha decay. If you look at the way radioactive isotopes break down, there are a few different ways they break down. One of them is beta decay, the release of an electron. One of them is gamma decay, the release of a high energy X-ray, a photon. These are the traditional forms of radiation that you think of that penetrate the walls, that penetrate the body. They get stopped by metal or by concrete. We're active in the space of alpha decay. This is where an isotope breaks down and releases a heavy alpha particle, which has got quite a bit of energy, incredibly energetic, incredibly potent in the way it kills cancer cells or any other cell that it encounters. However, because of its incredible size and energy and how quickly it transfers that energy, it's got incredibly short range. Not only is it unable to penetrate a sheet of paper, it can't even get through a few inches of air. And so while scientists have known for years that these alpha particles are incredibly more potent in killing cancer cells, and we can use significantly lower doses of radiation versus the beta and gamma, which are used today for all of the local radiation being given to more than half of cancer patients, no one has figured out how to use alpha radiation locally. And the reason is because of the range. So when doing local radiation today, which again, more than half of cancer patients are getting, we're doing it using this beta and gamma radiation because these waves can penetrate tissue. They can go from one side of the body to the other. And so we know how to get it into the tumor. We're going to put a large dose of this radiation into the tumor. It's going to bleed into the surrounding healthy tissue because of that long tail. And so we see that we're able to cover the tumor, but we're also doing damage to the surrounding healthy tissue. The alpha particles have exactly the opposite pattern. When we place an alpha emitter inside of a tumor, we find that those alpha particles get 40 to 90 microns of range in tissue, which is 40 to 90 millionths of a meter. And so what that means is that we can kill 3 or 4 cells, which will be incredibly dead, but there's no clinical utility here. There's nothing useful we can do with a treatment with a particle which only goes 40 microns in tissue. And so this inability to get the alpha particles to move into the tissue is the reason nobody does local alpha radiation, even though they understand how much more efficient and potent it can be. So what we've done is we've come up with an implant which is unique to this treatment and which allows us to overcome this issue by releasing alpha emitters into the tumor in a very controlled fashion. What we're doing is we're placing a little piece of metal, which is coated with radium-224. Radium is useful for us because it breaks down multiple times before it stabilizes. And along the way, it releases multiple alpha particles. And so while those particles themselves don't travel far, once the radium breaks down and its daughter atoms, its byproducts of the decay move into the tissue, they will continue to move farther and farther into the tumor, away from that source, and release those alpha particles deeper and deeper into the tissue. And so we extend the range, not by getting the alpha particles to move any farther, but actually by releasing the alpha particles deeper into the tissue. And why don't we roll this video, which I think can help explain that a bit more.
And so as you can see, what we're going to do is inject this source into the tumor and leave it there, coated with this radium. And while the radium is unable to leave the source, once it breaks down those daughter atoms, themselves alpha-emitting radioisotopes, they're going to recoil off of the source into the tumor. And they're going to continue to move deeper and deeper into the tumor, propelled by a mix of diffusion and convection, and also recoil from firing off these heavy alpha particles, and what's left flies in the opposite direction. And so we're not getting the alpha particles to move any farther, we're actually releasing them deeper and deeper into the tumor.
Right, so now we've got that extended range into the tissue, and we can actually do something useful with those alpha particles in tumors. And why don't we show you some of that data here, what kind of data we've seen so far. First of all, as I mentioned, we've tried this this is a sampling, we've tried this in about 20 different tumor types. We've never seen a tumor type which doesn't respond. A couple of reasons for that, but the beta and gamma radiation require oxygen to get that primary tumor destruction done. We don't require oxygen because the alpha particles directly destroy the tumors. So again, there's a couple of reasons why we see that tumors that might otherwise not respond to radiation respond to this alpha treatment. And so our view is, we would expect that if you can place these sources into tumors, they'll kill whatever tumor they come up against. Maybe I'll just show you a few examples. So this patient is from our earlier trial, our first study, which we did. This patient has tumors in the ear, is 80 years old, has already been treated by radiation and surgery, as you can see, continues to have multiple tumors in the ear. And what they can offer this patient is to cut off their ear, which is not a very attractive proposition for anybody. And at 80 years old, this person might not survive it. What you can see is we've inserted a couple of these sources. What you're seeing is after the treatment, when what's left is just the strings outside of the skin holding the sources in place. They're underneath the skin inside the tumor. Those sources are taken out 2 weeks later. This is a straightforward treatment. It takes about an hour to deliver these sources, and the patient goes home. A single treatment, it's not done for 5 or 6 days a week, for 8 or 12 weeks like other forms of radiation. This patient has had a one-time implantation of these sources. They come back 2 weeks later, and we take the sources out by cutting the string and pulling out those sources. And this patient, as you can see, his ear is fine. To my knowledge, this patient is, as far as I know, is still alive and still has his ear and is still cancer-free. So avoided a very drastic outcome with a very simple solution. As another example, this patient is 68 years old, has never been treated before, has a newly diagnosed scalp tumor. The scalp is tricky to treat in the elderly because it's quite friable. So if you try to cut out the tumor, the skin will disintegrate while you're doing the surgery. It's obviously a very sensitive area to radiate because of the proximity to the brain and the potential to do damage to the brain, which we don't have because of that incredibly short range of the alpha particles. And so we put these sources in, and I think the picture speaks for itself. A month later, not only has the tumor been destroyed, but you don't see really any evidence there was ever a tumor to begin with. We've destroyed the tumor in a way which also lets that regeneration of tissue come in and provides a very attractive outcome here, again, avoiding a couple of very drastic potential other treatments. This is very interesting. So this is a patient in that first study who came into our site in Italy for treatment with multiple tumors on the legs. You can see that the doctors decided to treat one leg before the others. So as you can see here, this is a 3-centimeter lesion. A month later, they're looking for cancer. What you see here is a suture from a biopsy, looking for cancer and not finding it. This was a complete response. This was a complete disappearance of the tumor on this particular tumor that was treated. And the doctor said, let's schedule the next treatment. Let's see how large the tumors have gotten so we can schedule the next treatment for the other tumors. And they were surprised to find that the other tumors had disappeared by themselves. We never treated the other leg. We also know the cancer has no range to go from one leg to the other. So this may have been a miraculous recovery, which was fantastic. Or as we've long since suspected, and you've heard me allude to earlier, it could very well be, as we expect to happen, that when we treat one tumor, it's such a powerful tumor destruction, and it's such a wake-up call to the body that the immune system is finding these tumors and helping the body fight them elsewhere, even the ones that we haven't treated. And in fact, we've seen this now in a number of patients where we will treat one tumor and we will see other tumors in the body disappearing as well. A very exciting avenue that we continue to explore in terms of taking a local therapy and making it part of a systemic solution. So this is interesting. This is new data that we just came out with about a week or two ago, looking at the long-term effects of our treatment. Because our treatment being locally focused, very rapid response, we often see within a couple days and certainly a couple of weeks after treatment that tumors are disappearing. But we want to know, what does that mean for the long-term outlook for these patients? And so we collected data after 4 studies were completed. We went back to those 4 studies and received permission to collect data on how those patients continue to evolve for months and years afterwards. We had patients all the way out to 4+ years after treatment to be able to track their performance post-treatment. So a couple of interesting things here, looking at 81 lesions, 81 tumors that were treated across these patients in 4 studies. We had an 89% complete response rate up front, meaning when we treated these patients, almost 90% of the tumors disappeared completely. Many of the other ones shrank, even if they didn't disappear. And if you look long-term, so on a 2-year basis, 77% of them stayed recurrence-free locally, meaning 77% of these patients on a statistical 2-year basis went through without seeing a recurrence in that area, which is a fantastic long-term piece of data. We're very happy about that. The safety, of course, is no less important here because radiation oncology is often accompanied by myriad debilitating side effects, systemic side effects like nausea, fatigue, vomiting, etc. We don't see those systemic side effects. We see local side effects in the area of the treatment because the alpha radiation is so tightly controlled. We'll see what's called grade 1 or grade 2 side effects, what's mild or moderate. So you can see here that in the initial period of treatment, the acute period, about 20% of patients had grade 2 moderate side effects. No one had grade 3 or higher, nothing serious, nothing life-threatening. And just as importantly, there's a tendency for radiation normally to generate late onset side effects, where patients will suddenly see that the areas around the treatment will have these chronic side effects that appear months after treatment. We didn't see any of that. No grade 2 or higher late toxicities observed 6 months after treatment. So again, we're seeing both immediate response, strong immediate safety data, and then those immediate responses stay durable for months and years on end in most cases. And we're not seeing that late onset toxicity where suddenly patients are suffering from the radiation months afterwards. A very, very strong set of both efficacy and safety data coming out of those trials. We've got quite a bit going on underway right now. If you look at our development pipeline, we're active in a bunch of places. I'll mention just a few things. So our lead indication, the cancer where we're most advanced, is in superficial tumors, tumors of the skin or the head and neck. We're already approved in Israel for treating these tumors. We can sell the product commercially for skin and oral cavity squamous cell carcinoma. We're about to apply in Japan for approval as well, where we finished our pivotal study, meaning we finished our study for registering the product. We are working on the submission for head and neck cancers and expect to submit that in the next few weeks. So look forward to that as an important milestone for us coming up. Our biggest focus, of course, is on getting this approved in the US, which is our largest market. In the US, we're focused on recurrent cutaneous squamous cell carcinoma. That's a skin cancer. And there we finished a pilot study last year. This was a study that was led at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, together with 4 other centers around the US. It was a small pilot study, and we saw a 100% complete response rate, meaning every tumor we treated disappeared completely during the study, again, with those very mild local side effects. Excuse me, a fantastic outcome from that trial. On that basis, we opened up a pivotal study, which we're now in the middle of running in the US. This is our study that we expect to take us for approval. It's a study looking at 86 patients with this recurrent skin cancer. We are currently open in about 20 centers in the US recruiting these patients, targeting the completion of patient recruitment by the end of Q1 2024, and then get that data over 2024, apply for approval, and targeting that approval in 2025. I would note we have breakthrough designation from the FDA, where the FDA recognizes that we can provide these patients potentially with a new alternative for poorly treated cancers. And so that gives us a fast track review, among other things, which should also help speed up that review process once we submit for approval. At the same time, we have a number of exciting trials going on underway elsewhere in terms of really dipping our toes into a few different cancers to demonstrate what I think you've heard me say a few times, which is that we are indifferent to the type of the tumor, and we believe that we can potentially be relevant to a very broad range of tumors as long as we can deliver these sources appropriately. And so right now we have a pancreatic cancer trial running in Montreal, where we should see the first 5 patients coming out soon with data in Q4 on the safety and feasibility of that study, a very exciting milestone for us. We're about to start a liver metastases trial in Canada as well. We have a pancreatic site opening up in Israel together with breast cancer and lung cancer. Brain cancer is coming down the pike as well. We also have a study running now with Keynote, which is one of the leading cancer immunotherapies, again, to test this idea that our treatment is not only destroying the tumor to which it's been applied, but may also be awakening the immune system. And so here the goal is to treat a particular tumor and give patients this immunotherapy in the background and see if we can help increase those response rates to the immunotherapy. A very exciting trial for us. Again, this is just a quick summary. We've got a prostate cancer trial running. We've got a vulvar cancer trial running in Cambridge in the UK. Again, a bunch of stuff going on. A very exciting set of trials here as we look to bring hope to a broad array of patients. Looking at our milestones in the next few months as a public company here, there's a lot going on, as you can see. As I mentioned, we should see the interim readout from our pancreatic cancer feasibility study on the safety and feasibility coming out in the next quarter, as well as initiating our first patients coming in liver, pancreas, and lung cancer very soon, submitting for PMDA approval in Japan very soon, and looking to get that approval next year, together with completing the recruitment of patients in that FDA approval study, our pivotal study, to be able to apply for approval and get that approval in 2025. And so if you look at our major items coming up over the next few years, this year, of course, focused on running that pivotal study in the US, getting some of these internal organ studies underway, like we have the pancreas study recently in Canada, filing for approval in Japan, as well as giving some of that efficacy and safety data, the long-term data that I just presented to you that came out a few weeks ago. Next year will be focused on getting that data from the pivotal study in the US, hopefully getting approval in Japan, as well as some other data from trials like our Keytruda combination trial, and getting ready for commercial launch as we look towards 2025, when we could see our first approval in the US for that recurrent skin cancer, as well as some other important data outputs coming from some of these very important and exciting internal organ trials. So with that, I'm going to pause. I'm going to thank you for your patience, and I'd love to take any questions if there are any. Thank you again.
Great job. Yes, we do have some questions. I'm curious. So radiotherapy has been delivered to tumors already. So what is the key innovation underpinning your technology?
Yeah, so it really comes down to the only way that we know how to do using alpha radiation. So everyone else doing cancer therapy with radiotherapy, locally treating tumors, where a clinician says, I want to treat that tumor over there, they are all doing it using these outdated forms, what we call beta and gamma radiation. They're doing it because they know how to get them into the tumor easily. No one has figured out how to do it using alpha radiation until we came along. Our secret sauce, as it were, is really this idea of trapping the radium onto this source, but allowing its products, its decay products, to escape into the tumor and let them flow deeper and deeper into the tumor, releasing these particles as they go. And so that's sort of the secret sauce that makes it work. But in the end, what comes out of it is a product which is the only one to use alpha radiation locally. It allows us to use incredibly minute doses, whereas other treatments are being given in what's called millicuries as a unit of radiation. We're dosing in microcuries, means we're dosing hundreds or thousands of times less, which is why we don't need these radiation safety protections for the patients or for the doctors. There's no lead vest or lead in the walls. It's why this goes in a cardboard box on DHL or FedEx. We don't need special handling. Again, it's a much more efficient and much more potent treatment and seems to be overcoming other forms of radiation. We take patients who have failed other gamma and beta-based radiation products, and we find that whereas they are seemingly radio-resistant, they're not responding to those radiotherapies, they are responding to ours. And so again, it's not just the efficiency of the radiation and the mild side effects, it's the fact that we're ultimately able to treat patients who seemingly have no other available hope because the other radiotherapies are not helping them.
Thank you for that. So does that mean your technology can be used in combination with other cancer treatments?
We certainly would expect that clinically for our trials. They're primarily monotherapy studies, so we're doing them on our own because we want to demonstrate definitively the product is doing what we expect it to do, and that it's able to destroy these tumors in a safe way without potentially conflating it with impacts from other products. The one exception to that is in the joint trial that I mentioned with Keytruda, where those patients are receiving our treatment locally for the head and neck cancer, because we've already done quite a bit of head and neck data, and so we've already demonstrated some of that safety and efficacy there. And so we're combining it with Keytruda to look specifically for that combination effect, where we can look for that synergy where the patients who might not have responded to Keytruda very well hopefully may do so in the presence of our treatment. But certainly, I think you ask about a commercial clinical setting, and given the way cancer therapy in general is much more of a toolbox rather than a single approach generally, we certainly would hope that clinicians would use this in combination with other therapies. From our perspective, there's no reason not to.
And Raphi, you mentioned you will be submitting for marketing authorization in Japan later this year. So do you plan to launch immediately? And if so, what value would this approval have?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple things. So, we are focused on launching first in the US, which we see as our most attractive market, largest market, best priced market. We are already approved in Israel, in our home country, as I mentioned, but have held off launch as well. So I imagine that if we get approved in Japan, we may wait a bit longer until the US launches first to set that price. I think the Japanese market is an attractive one in a couple different fronts. It is a large and relatively coherent market, with the ability for one party to be able to sell across the country. It's receptive to new advanced technologies, and so it could be a very attractive market for us. And we've been very active there, as I mentioned, already finishing that study and looking to apply for approval very soon. Even if we end up waiting a bit of time until the U.S. launches, I think it'll end up being a very important market for us.
So if someone wanted to copy your device and technology, how difficult is that? Also, how protected are you from the competition? And a viewer wants to know, is this patent protected, patent pending? Do you have a patent portfolio?
Yeah, we have quite a patent portfolio. I have a personal obsession on that front, so we spend a lot of time and money on that. So we've got about, at this point, more than 90 patents pending around the world. More than 90 patents granted around the world, more than 120 applications that are pending. It's a very strong patent franchise around the product and how it's manufactured and how it's delivered and how it's used, and some of the applicators we've come up for injection into the tumors. And that's just a sampling. We've really everything we think of, which is unique, we've ended up filing patents for. I think those provide a wealth of protection here because we've taken so many different angles around how this is made and how this is used and delivered to make it very difficult for someone to copy us. There's also quite a bit of know-how that goes into this as well in terms of the way in which we manufacture this. There is a bit of trade secrets here about how do you fixate the radium onto the source and purify the sort of impure isotopes that we receive, extract the radium, embed it into the source in a way where it can't leave, but allow its daughter atoms to escape. That has taken quite a while to perfect. That's something that we keep in-house. We do all of our manufacturing ourselves, among other reasons. Because of that, we want to keep that safe. It took us quite a while to get there. We would anticipate that even without the patents, it would take somebody else quite a bit of time as well to figure that out.
And so once you have your results from your pivotal skin cancer trial in the U.S. later this year, what's the plan going forward, and when can we see it in the market?
Sure. So the trial, again, should recruit this year, beginning of next year. We should see that data next year, targeting the approval in 2025. We are hoping to launch that ourselves in the United States, so that could be later in 2025 or perhaps early 2026. But we are working now on some of that commercial preparation together with our Chief Commercial Officer to be able to get that ramp up as quickly as we can after approval. So all eyes on that for sure on our side as well.
Maurice Perry wants to know if you can give a timeline and some milestones to FDA approval.
Yeah, so again, if the recruitment ends, let's say around the end of Q1 2024, which is what we're targeting, so we have to look for response and then 6-month durability of response. So the response data should come pretty quickly, let's say by mid 2024. The durability of that response by end of 2024, so we can submit end of 2024, beginning of 2025. We have that breakthrough designation, which means that we are supposed to get fast track review, generally implies a 6-month review period. And so we would expect, again, very roughly that call it the back half of 2025 could be an appropriate time to see that FDA approval.
And Nico wants to know about your balance sheet. Are your sales in Israel sufficient to fund future development and trials in the US, or are you going to need to go to the markets for more money?
Yeah, so a couple things. So as I mentioned, we aren't selling yet we are not selling yet in Israel for a couple of reasons, but part of it is because we want to launch first in the US to be able to recognize the US pricing and apply elsewhere in the world. We do quite a bit of compassionate use, so we don't let patients walk away on empty-handed. We do help patients, but in terms of commercial launch, we are looking to keep ourselves pristine until we launch first in the US, which we think is the right tactical approach here. In terms of our balance sheet, as I mentioned, $94.5 million, burning about $5 million a quarter at the moment. And so, again, we've got quite a bit of runway ahead of us. We're very, very careful with how we spend our cash. $5 million a quarter is quite impressive, I would argue, for a company with 120 or so employees and running multiple clinical trials in parallel. So we are not looking to raise money anytime soon. We could potentially in the future, if markets were better, if prices were more attractive, maybe build out some more manufacturing capacity if we raise money. But certainly for now, for the near term, easily for the next year or two, plenty of capitalization in place that we should be able to get us through those trials and out to that first approval.
Perfect. Well, great presentation, Raphi. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here, and thanks for everyone's attention. Take care.
Okay, everyone, stay with us. We'll be right back.